Is Naplan then the way in which we test our kids, is that out of date in some way?
It is and it isn't. It is a traditional way of testing, but it is the way of testing that is happening globally.
Right.
So in order to be competitive around the world educationally, we need to have these kinds of tests, but unfortunately they only give us part of the picture.
Okay, so then we do see a lot of kids having tutoring, doing extra work, extra homework to try and improve those results. Is that the way to go about it? Homework's such a contentious issue.
It's hard, and in many families' homes it is. It causes a lot of arguments and a lot of distress. There's good and bad to homework. There's good in that it allows, some children just love homework. They love to be doing things independently outside of school and applying their knowledge, and that's great. It gives parents some insight into what their children are learning, and that's also great. But the downside is when the homework is not really, there's no obvious point as to why a child's doing it. It might be boring, it might be very repetitive, it might take a really long time. So for children, you know, we need to balance out, well, quality homework is great, doesn't have to be every day, but homework that's repetitive and doesn't really have a point, there's not a place for it in our world, I think.
So then in your view, how can these results be lifted? I'm often conscious too that these tests are just around certain aspects of education, and so I'm wondering if a child gets results that aren't as good as they expected, how does that also potentially damage their sense of self-esteem, really, going ahead, knowing that they could be fantastic at sport and music and art and drama and all these other aspects to their education, when it's focused on literacy and numeracy primarily.
That's right, and Naplan is stressful for a lot of children. It's what they hear about term after term in the lead up to the tests and then afterwards as well. And I've seen research by children showing, you know, drawing pictures of how distressed they are, by young children, how distressed they are when Naplan is here and how they feel afterwards. I think we need to ensure that children have a holistic approach to learning, that they learn well in literacy and numeracy, but they still have time to explore art and music and all those other things that we know are important in our world. And if we're testing by a Naplan and standardised tests, then children need to be prepared for those kinds of tests, but also they need to be examined and evaluated in literacy and numeracy in other ways that isn't a sit-down paper and pencil test as well.
And in your view, are they being examined in more broadly? I guess every school does it differently, but are they being examined well in those two areas aside from Naplan? Because so many kids kind of get coaching just to manage Naplan itself. It's not necessarily what they do in the classroom.
That's right. Well, Naplan does tend to overtake everything, but yeah, schools do make a huge effort in making sure that they evaluate children's learning across the board, but unfortunately we tend to only hear about Naplan in the media.
Okay, so given the results and given this is international standardised testing, if those results don't improve over the next few years, for example, what then does it do for our sense of international rankings globally? We often have people coming here also to study. Does that put us down the list?
Well, it may do. It is a competitive educational environment out there, so it may do. I think the important thing is to ensure that our children enjoy learning, that they're really engaged in learning. That way, they're going to be performing better in these kind of tests as well as the other kinds of evaluations that they take part in.